Now, before I even get this overview started, I just want to confirm right now that the Purple Yoda is officially back. This album right here, this Artificial Age, confirms him as the quintessential forefather of R&B music. He is not only a master in R&B, he's a master of making a production work for his songs. He is a master at making lyrics so witty, so hilarious. I mean, you get so many elements in this album. So as we know, Artificial Age is one of two albums that Prince wanted to release in the fall, and he has released both albums, September 30th to be exact. Words just can't describe how I feel, because Artificial Age, I mean, just sitting with this album for the last 2 days and really listening to the songs and really getting the vibe with, I mean, songs like Clouds and The Breakdown and Breakfast Can Wait, This Could Be Us. I mean, this entire album is just near flawless for me. And near flawless doesn't mean that this is a groundbreaking album. It doesn't mean that it even trumps his glorious period in the 1980s when, you know, he released his great string of albums. Every song on this album has a purpose. You know, there's some tracks that are still kind of growing on me, like Artificial Cage, which opens this album, and you know, upon listening to this album, I actually heard Artificial Cage on the Yahoo Live Nation special that premiered Tuesday, on the day of this album's release in the US. And my first impressions was like, this is just so damn pop, and it's not, I mean, it didn't really resonate with me that well because it sounded very techno, very pop-ish. You know, it sounded very plastic. You know, the production really didn't give me that true essence of what I wanted from a Prince production. It's just one of those things where, you know, I don't want all of those, you know, synth sounds, all those over dramatic changes in his songs, and that's really what Artificial Cage really did for me. It has finally grown on me. It is a fun track. Like a lot of the songs on this album are just fun, catchy. You're not gonna get too many ambitious moments where he's really like, you know, just doing some other stuff musically, but I appreciate it because this is a very catchy album. This is filled with a lot of accessible songs that I think has something for everybody. If you enjoyed Prince back in the 80s, you know, you're going to get some of those elements in this album. One song that did it for me was The Gold Standard, and I think I mentioned this on Twitter Thursday when I first heard this album, that this took me immediately back to the Black Album. He has the that deep voice that sounds kind of like it really reminded me of Bob George. That you know, he was just going into his that deep synthesized voice. That I mean, I was like, this is mind blowing. It took me right back to the Black Album, that 1987 period. So I was like, wow, you know, and it, you know, it was funky. I was like, man, I was just not in my head. I mean, another track that did it for me was You Know. When I first heard You Know, I was like, you know what, I am ready for this album. And that song in particular kind of reminds me of stuff that you would hear in pop R&B music today, but he does it so well. Now I could say like my only minor nitpick with this album were probably the the affirmation segues after I let the album really, you know, grow with me enough. I kind of get them now because they're just like, you know, that's basically what they are. They're probably just affirmations, but there's a ambient instrumental music that kind of takes me back to the news period. I don't know why. I think the first one took me right back to the news period. It was just some interesting stuff happening there, but it really, you know, when I first heard them, it was like, okay, why are they on here? Another track that I really wanted to get into was What It Feels Like, because What It Feels Like, it's just probably my top 3 favorites on this album. I mean, I think all of the songs on this album are, I mean, I have no complaints, but that song in particular, like, it just took me way back to it took me way back to Emancipation, New Power Soul era Prince. It gives me that smooth, laid back funk style that I haven't heard from Prince in a long time. And it has Andy Allo on it, of course. She does an amazing job on both this track and Time. And Steve Harvey and all those other, you know, urban radio stations, they need to get on that track because that needs to be played on radio. Like, I think it would be a big hit on the urban charts. I really do think so. Now, one of my other favorites on this album is definitely Breakfast Can Wait. When I first heard Breakfast Can Wait, I was just so, it really didn't resonate with me that much, and I'm gonna be honest with you. The video was just, I didn't really get the video, but when I first heard the song initially, it really didn't get me that much because it was kind of like typical of him to kind of do a track like this. Somehow, listening to this song from an album context, from the context of this album, Artificial Age, it got me, like, immediately. I was like, wow, you know, when that bass really comes in, man, that bass, that smooth funk style that he does, you can hear a lot of those modern soul touches that he incorporates in this song. I mean, it's everything that you would want in a Prince song of this caliber. I just feel like Josh Welton, I gotta give that young cat a lot of props. That cat is about to do big things. I'm gonna tell you why. You know, for him to work with somebody as revered as a Prince just says a lot. And he was able to bring something out. He was able to bring something fresh out of Prince that I won't say I didn't hear on albums like 2010 or MPLS Sound, but they sound more focused on this album. They don't sound as contrived. They don't sound as forced. I appreciate, you know, producers and artists who collaborate and they can bring something fresh to the table. So that's what I really love. And again, I gotta give props where props is due. There's been a lot of people who said, oh, Joshua, you know, he did nothing for Prince, you know, he's ridiculous. Like, please, this guy, what, 23, 24 years old, you know, he's had some years in the industry, you know, he's been doing his work, he's been through it all, you know, and he finally got to work with somebody that hopefully he admires, and they are just doing big things. So it's not, you know, I appreciate that Prince is reaching out to young people and bringing a young approach to his music. Another song that really got me was definitely Way Back Home, which you know, when I first listened to this album, it really hit me really hard. This song is really a very emotional ballad, and I think it reflects on Prince's life and how he views himself as a man today. It's sung so beautifully. It has that melodic warmth to it that I just love. Clouds, you know, coming after somewhat iffy track like Artificial Cage, which is really, you know, don't get me wrong, it's very, you know, dance driven and funky. But Clouds is just, to me, what really opens this album. It really is that, to me, that sets the standard for what this album is about. And again, very soul driven, funk driven, that bass, you know, and you know, it has that that witty style that I love about, you know, I love that Prince does on a lot of his songs. Funk and Roll, the remix. Now this is probably the most controversial album, the most controversial song on this album, because it has garnered a lot of mixed reception. There's a minority that actually like the song. Then there's the majority that loathes the song with just a passion. Me personally, I don't love or hate the song. It's just decent to me, and it has really, if you listen to it on this album, this particular album, and you know, it kind of breaks up that, you know, that emotional sound that you got with way back home. And he's, you know, it's really more of a festive track. Even though I don't think that this is the best song on this album, you know what? It has a lot of elements to it that make me come back to it every time. You know, especially the second half of the song, Time with Andy Allo. I was like, man, you know, when I first heard this album and this track showed up, I was like, dude, you know, does he have more tracks like this in the vault? To me, this is really what makes Prince that guy. It just has that stank funk to me. I can't even describe it. It has that stank funk that only Prince knows how to do so well. I can't say anything else about this album. This album is just really good, and when I just tell you it's good, it's really, really good. Again, I don't think that Artificial Age breaks any new ground. It gives you an indication that Prince is an R&B genius. It reminds you of what made Prince so great in the 80s and the 90s. It has all of those, it has most of those elements in it, but with a more modern edge to it, and I love that. Y'all gonna bow down when y'all hear this. Like, this is some, just get the album and trust me, you won't be disappointed. Thank you all so much. Have a great night.